This was the team with the fastest ruck speed in the world against the team with the slowest ruck speed in the world. And in the end, 50-odd points to nil, I think is a harsh scoreline in Tonga, who I think actually didn't play that badly. But it was kind of what we were expecting, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did and they didn't play that badly.
Yeah.
They shot themselves in the foot a lot of times.
Yes.
The discipline was a real issue.
Yes.
I think that's something, this weekend across a few games, is something we're going to talk about quite a lot.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of issues with that. And generally, they looked like a little bit of a tired pub team that were doing their best at international level.
BBC's write-up, I think it's Tom Lynch, I forget, I apologise, said it was a typically indisciplined display from Tonga. And I thought, like, that's a harsh way for the BBC to frame it in their match report.
Sure.
But also you're a bit like, they're kind of right.
They're not wrong.
They're kind of right.
Yeah.
Like, it's been Tonga's biggest problem for a very long time. This Tongan team, like, we didn't really talk about it on the channel. We talked about it like, off-air in the office and like on social media and stuff a bunch. But like the Tonga squad they named for the PNC this year, old.
Yeah.
Old.
Great players, like, but a very high age profile.
Yes. Lots of really good, really old players. Lots of players that were great back in their day who are now kind of clinging on to the latter days. And a lot of great players who happened, like Ben Tamafina, right? Brilliant player, is 34. You can't change that.
Ziggy Fasiahoy playing loose head, 38.
Yes.
You know.
So you've got
a combined age of over
here.
70
Yeah.
between those two.
Which is crazy.
Props, yeah.
So that is a bit of an issue for this Tonga team. Obviously, having quality led them having a pretty decent PNC. Like, it's not been a bad year for Tonga at all. Qualified for the World Cup, weren't left in the position that Samoa were, where they had to go to the repechage and qualify there. They managed to get in on the base of their PNC performances, where they were pretty solid, playing the slowest rugby in the world. And that's not an exaggeration. They are slower than any other team in the PNC, in Rugby Europe, in the Six Nations, in the Rugby Championship, in any of them.
In Tier 1 and 2 international rugby.
Yeah.
Men's rugby. Yeah.
As far down as you can kind of get with Tier 2 before you get into like the borderline of like, are they Tier 3? Do we have a term for Tier 3? All of that.
Sure,
like,
sure.
Of the teams who can realistically contend to qualify for a World Cup, Tonga are the slowest. And I think they are about as good as you can be playing that slow and that brand of rugby.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're incredibly frustrating to play against. Their defence, I thought, at points was really good. You also, I feel like, this wasn't talked about much in the lead-up, and I don't know why, because it is one of the biggest factors in the result of this game. The fact that Tonga pulled out of all their autumn internationals for financial reasons. Yeah. Because the union couldn't afford to pay for the trips to Spain, and I forget where else. I think maybe they're playing Belgium, or they're playing a couple of games in Europe, maybe Portugal or someone. Apology, I forget. But they pulled out of all of those games because they couldn't afford to. Yeah. Like, the union is so cash-strapped. The only game that was making them enough money to be worth it was Scotland.
It was Murrayfield, yeah.
So they pulled out of all the other games. And this squad came together purely for this one game. They had no other game time since the PNC. They've had a few months off.
Sadly, you could tell.
Yeah, and you could tell. You could tell this was a team that kind of felt a bit like a scratch team that come together at the last second. Yeah. And unfortunately, that is the case with Tonga because, look, there's always been these stories, or particularly of Samoa, of union corruption, of the money going to the wrong places, etc. Who knows whether or not that's the case. But Tonga are not getting the support and they're not getting the game time. And some of that comes from, like, you know, the fact that they don't get to play home games, right? Like, they don't have the stadium, they don't have the infrastructure to welcome teams there. It's harder to produce revenue.
The interest from big teams to travel to Tonga. And granted, a lot of that is because of revenue, as you say,
infrastructure
financial.
And so on. And you think about
like, why would England want to go to Tonga? Because they're not getting a financial reward that they would get if they brought Tonga to Twickenham. Yeah. You know,
and
like,
then
probably Tonga will get a bigger payout if they played at Twickenham than if they hosted England.
They do. And this Tonga team are old enough now that realistically you're getting, as we saw at the weekend, like 60 minutes out of them, really. Like, that Tonga team went off a cliff. Two things happened at once, right? One is they hit 60 minutes and that team is old and tired and a bit haggard. And the other thing is Ben Tamafina came off. Yes. And, like, talk about a team encapsulated by their captain. Like, Ben Tamafina, unbelievably fit, like, works unbelievably hard, old, slow.
I love that man so much. Yeah. There are so few rugby players as popular as Big Ben. Yeah. Like, firstly, looking at him in the coin toss before the game with Sione Tuipulotu, he makes Sione look tiny.
Sione walking around in the shirt after the game was hilarious.
Honestly, love to see it. But Big Ben, not only is he a cult hero, but I find it crazy how fit that guy is.
Yeah.
Because he carries around so much weight. He's currently standing at 148 kilograms, which is ridiculous. He's the biggest I've seen him. And I saw him when he got back from Japan in the 2019 World Cup. Like, he is enormous at the moment. And again, like, he doesn't listen to that voice in his head that tells him he's tired at any point until he's brought off the rugby pitch. And like the Jackal turnover that he got in the first half was brilliant, where he's got 2 Scottish props look at him and think about clearing him out, and they kind of go, Big Ben, he wants the ball, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You can have it, Ben, you can have it. And yeah, just again, like, he's brilliant, and he remains this Tonga team's probably best player.
Yeah.
Obviously, Solomon Ikata is outstanding for Leicester Tigers, and God bless him. It wasn't a great day to be an inside centre playing against a Scotland team playing that quickly. As the link between forwards and backs, it was kind of the worst place to be on the pitch. But like, generally, I thought he actually had a pretty solid game. But yeah, those two are probably the 2 highest performing players in that Tongan team. And Big Ben, always stellar.
Tonga keeping this to 21-0 for quite a long period of the game was kind of a fair reflection. Like, Scotland were the better team, but not by the enormous margin that it made it look in the end by it being a 50-pointer.
Yeah.
Tonga worked incredibly hard, and sometimes hard work is enough, you know?
Yeah.
And whether they're going to, over the next few years, be able to step up a gear ahead of a World Cup, I don't know. I think they'll get a few more kind of former All Blacks and Wallabies and so on, plenty England players as well, stepping over to come and play for them.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Give
especially
them
if few of them are
Poland's.
only like, I want Mako playing for them. Because he'll make their team look older, even though they'll actually be younger.
That's true.
But if they can bring in a few 32 and 33-year-olds, then they're in business. But I don't want to keep harping on it, but like, this Tonga team work unbelievably hard. It's no wonder they burnt out by 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you're then left in a situation, right, where Scotland were basically banging their head on the wall for like most of the game. And Tonga were keeping them out with not relative ease, but like, Tonga didn't look that strained for large stretches, which
I know what you mean.
Like, you've got to ask a question of Scotland at that point. They beat them down in the end, right? But they were always going to.
Yeah.
Like, this Tonga team would have lost by 30, 40 points to any Tier 1 nation.
Yeah.
Because the Tier 1 nation can roll players off the bench who have the resources. Like, we forget, like, the population of Tonga is smaller than the population of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a huge nation. And yes, there's roots spread to a lot of communities in New Zealand, Australia in particular, and other nations. But, like, you've got to, if you're Scotland, I think there are question marks you can ask over the first 60 minutes of this performance in a similar way to the kind of like start of the second half against Argentina, where they kind of dropped off and allowed Argentina back into the game.
Here's a question. Do you think Scotland played the game plan that they would have played against a Tier 1 nation?
I think they played the game plan they play in this fixture all the time, which they play all the time. Like,
Yeah.
we talked about it in the lead, and there's a lot of like response when we talked about the USA game of Scotland can't get fixtures against the bigger nations and so on. I think a bit of that is you've got to pay them, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've got to pay the All Blacks to come and play for you. Like, Scotland make less than an IRFU, but they made a similar amount, maybe more than the W, I believe, last
We're in
year.
the entertainment business.
Yeah. At the end of the day, sometimes you've got to invest. You've got to go like, okay, we're going to pay the Springboks to come and play for us.
Yeah.
Play us. And they don't come and play for free, and they don't play for part of the gate, as is the case years back. And I think there's more to it than, we maybe oversimplified it a little bit and didn't factor all of that in. And also Mark Dodson's off suing the weather, and I got that wrong as well. I forget he's not around. But I still think Scotland playing too many of these games. And there's a little bit in the back of my head going like, is this a win percentage thing? Is this Gregor wanted to try his depth out, etc.? Because I don't know what we learned from this, And Sione Tuipulotu said a really interesting thing after the game. I don't know if you saw him say it.
Go on.
In the press conference, he said, I'm so tired of coming up here after games in the autumn like this, where we then promise all the things we're going to go on and do next year. And that is the growing feeling amongst fans, amongst press. And if that's not spreading to the players, then you've got to ask some questions of like, this Six Nations becomes do or die.
Yeah, I think it's a weird timing for it being the last game of 2025 for them. But this felt like the Rugby World Cup pool game.
Yeah.
Kind of a run out, I guess, the dress rehearsal for something like that. Because Scotland, I think, did play a slightly different game plan to what they usually play. A lot of that obviously comes down to the fact they went with Fergus Burke playing at 10 rather than Finn Russell. Finn Russell, who obviously has... A lot of the attack will revolve around him and Sione Tuipulotu as a combination. Obviously, Fergus Burke's a little bit different, the way he plays at Saracens. He plays a little bit deeper, kind of waits for the ball to come to him a little bit more rather than sending everything through Sione. And quite interestingly, thought that the Scottish attack was tailored a little bit more to what they expected from Tonga. And that is, firstly, you get on the front foot, you make a big carry, you make a line break, you get a tackle bust, whatever it is, you get an offload in. And from there on out, you just try and tighten up that Tongan defence. You try and squeeze it. And for most of their tries, this was the theme. Jamie Ritchie's try, very much the theme here. As soon as they're on the front foot, they just flood a load of players around the ruck. Just around the ball. So all the Tongan players get back on side, they're near the ruck and they point up and go, brilliant, I'm marking somebody. And at that point, they go skip pass out all the way to Sione Tuipulotu, hits Bradbury, gets over the gain line. They do the exact same thing, come round the corner next phase, really short carries, they skip the ball out, Jamie Ritchie crashes over. And very similar for the next try, they skip the ball out, I think it's to Bradbury here, who then feeds it back inside to George Turner, who's running that inside line. He could have given this to about half a dozen players who would have scored in this case because Tonga have flooded around that breakdown. And then later on, Tonga get used to this and go, right lads, we're marking that area around the breakdown a bit too much. And for Max Williamson's try, they do the opposite. They instead just give the ball to the what looks like unthreatening lads, i.e. Xander Ferguson here closest to the breakdown, who gets really close to the try line because they are spread a little bit more thinly. He's carrying into two powerful men in Fasiahoy and Tamafina here, but he makes a great carry. Ball press is really good. And then Max Williamson does the exact same thing. Finishes the ball behind his back. It's an outstanding finish.
You talked a bit about Fergus Burke there, and I want to drill in on that because I thought Burke's performance was maybe the most interesting thing of this game. As I said, he's slightly more passive than Finn. You watch Finn Russell play the game, and he is always kind of the protagonist. You come out of every game he plays talking about him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about him because he makes one mistake and they miss the fact that he kicked brilliantly for the entire game or that he's been throwing lots of little short balls and he won just the one big ball over the top. Regardless, you come out of the game talking about him. Fergus Burke is more of a membrane. And he was quite, I don't mean this as an insult, he was quite quiet in the way he played the game, right? In that he got the ball plenty of times, but he's much more subtle.
Yes.
He doesn't look for those big long balls. He doesn't
ship
look
it
for
on
that. Yeah.
Nice and early.
And so that in turn changes Scotland's structure ever so slightly. And it wasn't night and day. It wasn't like they're playing a completely different system. But because, as you say, your 10 is not looking for getting the ball in the boot and looking to sling a massive long pass over the top. They're never thinking about the cross kick or rarely thinking about the cross kick because they're not looking for those kind of bigger moments. It leads to Scotland's attack being a little more compact. It leads to it coming like in tighter spaces. And that became slightly easier for Tonga to mark and to cover initially. But as the game went on, I thought it actually did a really nice job of tiring them out. And it led to a lot of the same Tongan players making lots and lots of tackles. And okay, I want to put a bet in here, right? How many minutes do you think it was before Tonga had made more tackles than Scotland go on to in the entire match?
Oh, that's a good question. I reckon early second half, maybe 50 odd minutes.
17 minutes.
17?
17.
1-7?
1-7. 1-7.
Bloody hell.
It might have been 18, but it was like, yeah, it was in the first half. It was in the first 20 minutes.
That is a dream game for a Scottish back right there.
It is. So like Tonga were incredibly tired, but there was something about the way Fergus Burke played the game in that he looks more kind of, and it's not an insult, it's not like a bad thing, right? But he is generally targeting those forward packs and making them make lots of tackles. I think it's a little bit Saracens, it's a little bit kind of, you go back to the Crusaders, right? Like you look at him over that period and there is a lot of like, we play thinking about the wider picture rather than Finn Russell's thinking about like every option, every blade of grass on the pitch at this moment in time. Burke is thinking 80 minutes. He's thinking time rather than space.
Yeah.
And that led to Tonga being tired out really nicely. The other side of this, right, is what's the point? Because...
What, any of this in rugby?
I mean, yeah, generally, yeah. But you look at that New Zealand game, you look at that Argentina game, Finn Russell played all but 3 minutes in the two of them. You look at the Six Nations, Finn's playing 80 minutes every week.
Yeah.
Scotland have been playing endless games against Tier 2 nations, and they've used them. Adam Hastings, in that USA game, played a very different game, where again, the pods are standing wider off him, they're playing more expansive, they're playing a game he loves to play, which is lots of like long balls and very crisp style of attack. Fergus Burke, where they come in and they tweak the same shape again to work around their 10, and it's shorter balls, and it's getting the opposition tackling a lot, and it's playing a lot of continuity. And then they don't use that in bigger games.
You're like, so right.
When they come back to these games against, you know, anyone ranked above Wales in the world.
When are they going to use that attack?
Like they don't use it.
You think about...
They come back and they just play the same way. And like that Argentina game was crying out for Tom Jordan to come on and do something different. And that isn't an insult on Finn, it's why you have a bench, so they can come on and provide impact. And Finn did a great job over the first like 60 odd minutes. You then needed, actually, because Argentina got very used to defending the way Scotland were attacking, bring someone on, change that picture. Scotland are doing a really good job of building this like team who can change based on the fly half, quite simply just tweaking a little bit of how the attack works.
I mean, we discussed this when we did a video on Scotland, Ireland and the Six Nations this year, where we'd had a disagreement during the game, where I'd said, I think Finn Russell's having quite a poor match. They need to sub him off just to send out the message that, like, you're not indestructible.
Yeah.
I know that you're the vice captain and you're the best player, let's be honest, and the player that we revolve our attack around, but there needs to be a plan B. There needs to be an option for if Finn Russell starts making mistakes, what then? And this is the interesting part.
And I disagreed with you, and I thought you'd leave Finn on.
Yeah. And this is a part of this, because in a World Cup, if Finn has an absolute stinker and the attack isn't working, and let's say they play against, let's say, I don't know, Australia or somebody like that, they can't draw Australia. Let's say play against South Africa, and they have just tailored their defence to how Scotland attack. And they've figured out a bulletproof way of defending that, and nothing they're doing works. What you do is then, if you've got a second attacking system, you can run with a second fly half, you bring Finn Russell off, or you move his position, you move him to 12 or something like that, which I know he's not played in over a decade at this point, but you might just want him on the pitch because of his skill set, even if you're not running the attack that he likes. You then change that so somebody else can do this. And the thing about this is, the Lions tour just gone, the way Andy Farrell used Finn Russell was quite similar to how he started to use Sam Prendergast in the Six Nations. I.e., he would get Jameson Gibson-Park to fling a really long ball to him, and he would stand really, really flat. And they would put like a high-pressure decision on him constantly, because they know he's got the golden wrist. He's got one of the best passes of any fly-half in World Rugby, if not the best pass of any fly-half in World Rugby. Whereas, like, Fergus Burke is the complete opposite type of 10 to that. He does not play flat to the line at all. He sits so deep. He doesn't want defenders to come to him. He wants defenders to make decisions further out from him. He likes to catch the ball and ship it on, look up and go, right, in 3 phases time, they will tighten up if I keep giving these players these balls, and then I'll be able to kick it. And then I'll be able to fling it wide. Then I'll find a gap for myself to run through. And he thinks a few phases in advance, whereas Finn adapts on the fly in terms of shape, like changing around him at all times. They could not be more different as fly halves. And I just feel like you need to
Without being Dan Parks.
Yes, very fair point. Very fair point. But I don't know, I feel like you need to get Scotland. It's great that they're trying this against games like Tonga. They have to try it in Tier 1 tests if they need to, if they want to do this in World Cups.
We keep talking about Scotland stalling a little bit. Sione Tuipulotu says he keeps talking about promising things they're going to do and then them not quite happening and then falling just short. And I don't quite know how to word this and it to sound like how I feel, because it's still something I'm coming to terms with and still something I'm kind of like working out how to word in my head, right? But is a little bit of Scotland starting to go a tiny bit stale. Not, the whole loaf isn't gone, but like the crusts are slightly firmer than you want them to be on the loaf of bread, right? Is a part of this the fact that Townsend's attack is more malleable than we are giving it credit for, as we see in these games when other 10s come in. But they are so reliant on Finn Russell because he is their best player, because he is their star, because he's the guy that built their attack around, that they're not giving them a chance to change it up. And it allows them to become predictable. And even though Finn Russell is one of the most unpredictable players in the world, all you have to do is watch for like the things you now know he goes for that are kind of in his like frame of reference.
There's only so many things you can do on a rugby pitch.
If you bring in, and from the positions he will naturally start in and naturally stand in, and things he will naturally call from his 10 and 12, or his 12 and 9, if you put in a Fergus Burke or an Adam Hastings or a Tom Jordan into that situation, Ross Thompson, whoever, into that situation, it naturally changes what the defence is looking for. And that isn't an insult on Finn Russell at all.
Finn Russell's an infinitely better player than all of these guys. But
it's just, is it a reflection on...
He gets targeted.
They need to, they need to be doing more to think about what the opposition is covering rather than just themselves. And when you're only thinking about yourselves, you go, Finn is our best player, we leave him on for 80. And I understand that completely. As you say, we had that debate in the Six Nations, and I was saying you leave Finn on because he's your best player. Do we now need to be at a point where we're going, actually, 70 minutes, if it's going really well, Finn stays on for 80. If it's starting to get a little bit like Argentina, or you think about even maybe, I was going to say the England game, but obviously Finn then has a blind in the last 10 minutes. But, you know, like that happened where it was starting to get like England were just all over them, right? Do you go, okay, we've got Fergus Burke on the bench, or even Tom Jordan or whoever. We're going to bring them on and they're going to change how we attack a bit. You look at Wales over the last few weeks, a perfect example of this, right? Dan Edwards doesn't call that much ball out himself through his own hands, but when he does it like a lot repeatedly. Jared Evans comes on and starts calling different pictures and calling different things, and so the same patterns look very different and then making more ground. And it leads to people on Twitter being very angry that Jared Evans isn't starting because he's making impact every week. And like, no, he's making impact because the starting 10 is doing a great job of wearing the opposition down and getting to expect one thing, then you can come on.
It's something like Jalabert, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So like complete opposite attacking 10s. One really likes the ball in his hands, the other one sits back and lets the game happen.
If they can do it with Giacomo De Rey, then Scotland can do it with the combination of like 4 or 5 great 10s.
It's funny, we're getting angry about how good Scotland's attack is here.
Yes.
That is what we're doing, because we're seeing how adaptable it is and going, hang on, why aren't we seeing this all year round?
I do think there's a point in what I was saying earlier. I think Scotland probably should have got more points in the first 50 minutes.
Sure.
I think they left a lot of tries out there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those Tonga's defence was very good and very solid for a long time, and they worked unbelievably hard, as we talked about at the start. But I also think like we saw enough in this game to be like, they can do more than they've been doing. Yeah, and we'll continue to see that. And you've got to find something to talk about with the game, haven't you?
Yes. So, last couple of points I want to talk about. Jamie Ritchie, absolutely superb, playing at number 7. Obviously, Scotland have developed so much depth in that back row. Magnus Bradbury picked up player of the match. Andy Onyema-Christie was brilliant on his return. I think his carrying is absolutely superb. Gets around the park so well. But Jamie Ritchie is standing tall among all of those options. And other than Gregor Brown, who's been injured but in the last game and a half or so, I don't know, it's just really great to see that they're not developing, but you know what I mean, they're nurturing those options even more than
these players get another go and get really step up. Jamie Ritchie really did.
And speaking of the age profile of Tonga, give me your stats about Sitaleki Tamani, please.
So Jamie Lyle did bring some commentary. Sitaleki Tamani became the 4th oldest debutant in international rugby history. He is the oldest ever for a team that's qualified for a World Cup at any point in their history. He's 39 years of age.
So he made his debut for Australia in 2012, June 2012 against Wales. And here we are 13 years later.
Same game Ashley Beck made his debut, and Ashley Beck retired 5 years ago.
Yeah.
More than 5 years ago,
And also, come to think of it, Tamani would have been 26 then, so it's not like he was like a young spring chicken, first coming in.
Where Beck was.
Yeah. How bizarre is that?
Yeah.
But that's really...
Huge props to him.
Yeah, fair play to him. I wonder if he's going to go to the World Cup or whether this is just like the definition of giving back. It's literally like somebody coming out of retirement to play with their kid, isn't it?
There's a little bit of that energy, isn't there?
Yeah.
But then like this Tonga team I'm quite enjoying because there's a lot of that going on.
Oh yeah.
And, like,
it's a pub team. Party vibes.
Yeah,
I love watching them.
They're great fun. I really enjoy watching them.
Sonatani Takalua starting for them.
Yeah.
Again, by the way...
He's only 34.
Competing with the Joshua Tuasova World Cup of Calves, like...
I enjoyed the camera just sticking on them for a bit and just being like I imagine it was almost the camera didn't ask for that. No. The camera was just like, holy shit. And he'd been filming them for like 10 minutes.
Jamie Lyle had been thinking about bringing it up for the whole game.
It was like the wedding video in Love Actually. Like he's been filming his calves, like Keira Knightley, instead of like the actual wedding.
But also like Sonatani Takalua is still the starting line for Tonga.
Yeah.
That's kind of mental.
Honestly, I wouldn't put him past being at 2031.
Yeah, he's probably going to do it, isn't he?
He's pretty good.
Who else for Tonga? William Havili, I thought, was pretty solid at fullback.
Yeah.
Point in 50-22, which was quite exciting.
Yeah.
So Tonga, fairly lacking in discipline, I think it's safe to say.
Yes.
But I hope they had fun.
When you pick up a red card 4 minutes in, that almost goes without saying.
Yeah. Sure. But you could tell that they'd not played together in quite a long time. And it felt like a Barbarians performance where a load of great players have been pulled together and they don't have an opportunity to actually do anything.
Yeah. And I feel for them not getting any points on the board because I thought they would have deserved that.
They definitely
they worked really hard.
But they deserved the Solomon Ikata try for short line off 9 with like 5 minutes to go. That's what should have happened. So I'm going to invent that happened.
Yeah, that happened. That happened. We've decided now. Yeah, you all enjoyed that try, didn't you? I did.
Yeah. Here's a picture of Solomon Ikata's face with a rugby ball superimposed onto the Scottish try line. There you go. He scored. You can't disprove it.
He scored. There's no one can disprove this.
I've just given myself an editing job.
This is the greatest deep fake in rugby history.
Yeah, ever since the old famous France versus USA game from 1987.
One of the greatest games of all time.
What a great game that was.
Sandy Lomb, what a debut.
He was brilliant at skateboarding and playing on the wing. But
This is now too deep a cut into the Scud Rugby lore.
It really is. But if you know, you know.